What if I told you that hidden within the ancient wisdom of alchemy lie 4 simple words that function as master keys to reality itself? Not metaphorically, but literally. 4 vibrational codes that, when properly understood and applied, can shift the very fabric of your existence from the inside out. You've probably heard about manifestation, visualization, positive thinking, all surface-level techniques that barely scratch the diamond beneath. But what you're about to discover goes deeper than any modern self-help approach because it's rooted in something far more ancient and infinitely more powerful. These aren't just words. They're living formulas, each one containing within it a specific frequency of creation. When you truly understand their essence and begin to embody them in sequence, you don't just change your circumstances, you change the very lens through which reality reveals itself to you. But before we dive into these codes, let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced that strange moment when you suddenly become aware that you're living someone else's life? When you look around at your routine, your relationships, your goals, and realize that somehow along the way, you stopped being the author of your own story and became a character in someone else's script? That moment of recognition, that sudden awakening to the fact that you've been operating on autopilot, that's not a crisis. That's an invitation. Add an invitation from your deeper self to remember who you really are and what you're actually capable of creating. The ancient alchemists understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to grasp. That consciousness isn't just an observer of reality, it's the active ingredient in reality's creation. They knew that by transforming the inner landscape of the mind, you automatically transform the outer landscape of experience. This is why they developed what they called the great work, the opus magnum, not the crude fantasy of turning lead into gold, but the sophisticated science of turning unconscious living into conscious creation. And at the heart of this great work are 4 fundamental operations, 4 sacred words that serve as the pillars of all genuine transformation. The first word is solve, from the Latin meaning to dissolve, to break apart, to separate. But in the alchemical sense, solve doesn't mean destruction. It means conscious deconstruction. It's the art of taking apart what isn't serving you so thoroughly that you can see its individual components clearly. Think about the last time you felt truly stuck in your life, whether it was in a relationship, a career, a pattern of thinking, or an emotional state. The reason you felt stuck wasn't because change was impossible. It was because you were looking at the whole tangled mess as one immovable block instead of seeing the individual threads that could be unwoven. Solve is the practice of intellectual and emotional separation. It's learning to distinguish between what is truly you and what has been borrowed, inherited, or imposed upon you by others. It's the courage to examine your beliefs not as sacred truths, but as working hypotheses that can be tested, modified, or completely discarded if they no longer serve your evolution. When you apply solve to a limiting belief, you don't just reject it or try to replace it with a positive thought. You dissect it. You ask where it came from, what purpose it served when you first adopted it, what fear it's trying to protect you from, and whether that protection is still relevant to who you're becoming. For example, let's say you have a deep-seated belief that you're not worthy of abundance. Instead of just affirming, "I am worthy," which often feels hollow and unconvincing, you would apply solve. You would separate this belief into its component parts. Whose voice first told you that you weren't enough? What specific experiences reinforced this message? How has this belief shaped your choices, your relationships, your relationship with money and success? As you dissolve the belief into its origins and effects, something remarkable happens. It loses its power over you, not because you've fought it, but because you've understood it. And once you understand something completely, you're free to choose whether or not to continue carrying it. But solve isn't just for beliefs. It's a way of approaching any area of your life that feels solid, unchangeable, or overwhelming. Yet your career dissatisfaction isn't one giant problem, it's a collection of specific elements. Your relationship struggles aren't one massive incompatibility. They're a series of communication patterns and unmet needs that can be individually addressed. The key to mastering solve is developing what the alchemists called the analytical mind. This isn't the same as overthinking or rumination. It's the ability to step back from emotional reactivity and see the architecture of your experience with clinical clarity. When you can dissolve any situation into its component parts, you regain your power to work with those parts consciously. Once you've mastered the art of conscious dissolution, you're ready for the second alchemical code, COAGULA. From the Latin meaning to congeal, to bind together, to give form. If solve is about taking apart, COAGULA is about putting together. But not just any kind of assembly, conscious reconstruction based on intention rather than accident. Here's where most people get lost in their transformation journey. They become excellent at identifying what's wrong, what needs to change, what they want to leave behind. They dissolve old patterns, break free from limiting relationships, clear their mental and emotional clutter. But then they stop. They live in the space between the old life they've deconstructed and the new life they haven't yet built. COAGULA is the alchemical understanding that destruction without creation is not transformation, it's just chaos. After you've dissolved what doesn't serve you, you must consciously coagulate what does. You must take the raw materials of your deconstructed experience and rebuild them according to your deepest truth rather than your inherited programming. This is where the real magic happens. When you consciously choose what to rebuild and how to rebuild it, you're not just changing your life, you're authoring it. Every choice becomes an act of creation. Every decision becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of your existence. Let's return to our example of the unworthiness belief. After you've dissolved it through solve, after you've understood its origins and seen through its illusion, you don't just leave an empty space where that belief used to be. You consciously coagulate a new understanding in its place. But here's the crucial point. This new understanding can't be borrowed from a self-help book or copied from someone else's journey. It has to emerge from your own deep knowing, your own direct experience of your true nature. COAGULA is the process of allowing your authentic self to crystallize into new patterns of thought, feeling, and action. This might mean developing new daily rituals that support your emerging identity. It might mean restructuring your environment to reflect your evolving values. It might mean consciously choosing relationships that honor the person you're becoming rather than the person you used to be. The ancient alchemists understood that COAGULA requires both vision and patience. You must be able to see clearly what you want to create, but you must also trust the natural timing of the coagulation process. Just as a crystalline structure forms gradually under the right conditions, your new life patterns need time and consistency to solidify into stable reality. This is why so many people fail at lasting change. They expect immediate results from their transformation efforts. They dissolve old patterns on Monday and expect their new life to be fully formed by Friday. But COAGULA teaches us that conscious creation is a process of steady accumulation, of daily choices aligned with our deepest intentions, gradually building momentum until they become the new normal. The third alchemical code brings us into the realm of directed energy, CIRCULATIO. From the Latin meaning circulation, the continuous movement and refinement of energy within a closed system. In alchemical terms, this represents the understanding that transformation is not a linear process, but a cyclical one, where each revolution brings you to a higher level of the same essential truth. Most people approach change as if it were a straight line from point A to point B. They want to solve their problems once and for all, overcome their limitations permanently, reach their goals, and then maintain that achievement indefinitely. But life doesn't work in straight lines. Life works in spirals and cycles, in rhythms of expansion and contraction, growth and integration. CIRCULATIO is the recognition that every level of your development will require you to revisit the same fundamental themes, but from increasingly sophisticated perspectives. The relationship issues you thought you'd resolved will resurface in new forms that reveal deeper layers of healing. The creative blocks you overcame will return as invitations to access even greater levels of your authentic expression. This isn't failure. This isn't regression. This is how consciousness evolves. Each time you cycle through a familiar challenge, you bring to it everything you've learned from previous encounters. You're not starting over, you're starting higher. The practical application of Circulatio involves learning to work with the natural rhythms of your growth process instead of against them. When old patterns resurface, instead of judging yourself for not being over them yet, you ask what new level of mastery they're inviting you to develop. When familiar emotions arise, instead of trying to banish them permanently, you explore what they're trying to communicate about your current expansion. This is perhaps the most liberating insight of the alchemical tradition. You don't have to get it right once and for all. You don't have to achieve some final state of perfection and then maintain it. You just have to trust the circulation, trust the process, trust that each revolution of the spiral is taking you deeper into your own truth. Circulatio also applies to the relationship between your inner work and your outer results. As you dissolve old patterns and coagulate new ones, those changes need time to circulate through all areas of your life. Your relationships need time to adjust to the new you. Your career needs time to reflect your evolved values. Your financial reality needs time to align with your transformed relationship to abundance. This circulation period can be uncomfortable because you're living in the space between who you used to be and who you're becoming. Your inner reality has shifted, but your outer circumstances haven't caught up yet. This is where faith becomes essential. Faith in the process, faith in the circulation, faith that what you've set in motion inwardly will eventually manifest outwardly. The fourth and final alchemical code represents the culmination of the entire transformative process. Sublimatio, from the Latin meaning to elevate, to refine, to transform something gross into something subtle. In alchemical terms, sublimation is the process by which dense matter is transformed directly into vapor without passing through the liquid state. Metaphorically, it represents the moment when your transformation becomes so complete that you transcend the very level of consciousness where your original problems existed. Sublimatio is what happens when you've dissolved, coagulated, and circulated enough times that you begin to operate from an entirely different frequency of being. Your old limitations don't get solved, they become irrelevant. Your former struggles don't get overcome, they get transcended. This is the difference between solving problems and evolving beyond them. When you solve a problem, you remain at the same level of consciousness that created the problem in the first place. You just find a better way to manage it. But when you sublimate, you rise to a level of awareness where that type of problem simply doesn't exist. For instance, instead of learning better techniques for managing anxiety, sublimation might involve developing such a deep trust in the intelligence of life that anxiety becomes impossible. Instead of finding strategies to attract more money, sublimation might involve such a profound understanding of your creative power that abundance becomes your natural state. The key to sublimation is consistency with the first three codes over time. You can't skip directly to transcendence. Yet you have to earn it through the patient application of dissolving, coagulating, and circulating until those processes become so natural that they happen automatically. But here's what most people don't understand about sublimation. It's not a permanent state that you achieve once and then maintain forever. It's a capacity that you develop, a frequency that you learn to access with increasing ease and regularity. Some days you'll operate from the sublimated level. Other days you'll find yourself back in the circulation phase, and that's perfectly natural. The beauty of these four alchemical codes is that they work together as a complete system. When you feel stuck, you apply solve to dissolve the blockage into its component parts. When you feel scattered, you apply coagula to consciously reorganize your energy around your true priorities. When you feel impatient with your progress, you trust Circulatio to complete its natural cycle. And when you feel ready to transcend an entire category of limitation, you invoke Sublimatio to lift your consciousness to a higher octave. But there's something crucial you need to understand about working with these codes. They're not techniques that you apply from the outside. They're principles that you embody from the inside. They're not magic spells that work automatically. They're frequencies of consciousness that you must attune to through practice and patience. This means that your success with these codes will depend not on your intellectual understanding of them, but on your willingness to live them. To make them the foundation of how you approach every challenge, every opportunity, every moment of choice in your daily existence. Start small. Choose one area of your life that feels stuck or unsatisfying. Apply. Solve by examining that area with ruthless honesty, breaking it down into its constituent elements, understanding the beliefs and patterns that have created the current situation. Then apply COAGULA by consciously choosing what you want to rebuild in its place, taking concrete daily actions that align with your vision. Trust CIRCULATIO to handle the timing, to bring you the experiences and insights you need exactly when you need them. And remain open to SUBLIMATIO, to those moments when you suddenly realize that you're no longer the person who had that problem in the first place. Ancient alchemists spent lifetimes mastering these principles because they understood that true transformation is the highest art form available to human consciousness. It's the art of taking the raw material of your current experience and consciously refining it into the gold of your fullest potential. You have everything you need to begin this work right now. Not tomorrow, not when your circumstances improve, not when you feel more ready. The laboratory is your daily life. The raw materials are your current challenges and opportunities. The fire is your willingness to face truth. And the gold you're seeking has been waiting inside you all along, ready to be revealed through the patient application of these timeless codes. Remember, you're not just changing your life when you work with these principles. You're participating in the ancient and ongoing project of conscious evolution. You're contributing to the elevation of human consciousness itself. Every pattern you dissolve, every authentic choice you coagulate, every cycle you complete with awareness, every transcendence you achieve ripples out through the collective field and makes it easier for others to do the same. This is the true meaning of the great work. Not just personal transformation, but the transformation of the world through the transformation of the self. These four words, solve, COAGULA, CIRCULATIO, SUBLIMATIO, are not just tools for individual growth. They're codes for collective awakening, keys to unlocking the next level of human potential. The question now is not whether these codes work. The question is whether you're ready to work with them, whether you're willing to trade the familiar limitations of unconscious living for the unknown possibilities of conscious creation, whether you're prepared to become an alchemist of your own existence. The invitation has been extended. The codes have been revealed. The only thing left is for you to begin.